Gentlemen, we're back, episode 1 of year 10. Good grief. Dr. Hans Utter is back. Hans, welcome.
Hey, Jan, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back. I skipped a few shows. I didn't want to. Oops. I didn't mute the right page, apparently. Hold on a second. Apparently, I have too many windows open.
Hey, Jan, if you don't mind, I need to get another adapter for my laptop. It looks like this adapter is crapped out, so it'd be about 40 seconds here.
All right, go for it real fast. Well, apparently I was having trouble anyway, so hold on just a second, folks. We'll get restarted here. Sorry about that. Good grief. And we have an interesting show. Somebody had sent me an email like a year ago, and I've finally gotten through all of my 2017 emails. I apologize for the delay, but they sent me a show with Jordan Peterson and Howard Bloom called Drinking from the Fire Hose with Howard Bloom. This guy who is the biggest egomaniac you've ever heard of. And so we're going to be discussing this show tonight and this guy's impact on music culture and a lot of other things and how it divulges from here. And, you know, for those of you who don't know, E. Michael Jones is well exposed, Jordan Peterson, and people ask me all the time to do shows about, you know, kind of exposing him and whatever. He took over Leary's job at Harvard, you know, social relations guy. He went to school at the same place as you and Cameron of MK Ultra. Let's see here. So he was up at he was at McGill University, and you know, again, he took over Leary's job at Harvard. He's big into George Orwell, Eric Blair. He's big into Aldous Huxley. Oh, geez, there's that name again. And so, you know, it's to me, it's obvious that he's one of the boys, and you know, he actually used the same tactic as Tim Leary. Leary pretends to get fired from Harvard. Really, Leary was recruited by Aldous Huxley and Humphrey Osmond to the MK Ultra program, and so you know they created a whole PR stunt where Andrew Weil outs him in the Harvard Crimson, and this is a PR stunt to give Leary the street credibility that he needs to go out and promote psychedelic drugs as the new guru. Harvard was trying to suppress his spiritual message, you see. So that is, of course, the social relations ploy that was used to springboard Leary as the psychedelic guru and got him international media attention. It wasn't him being suppressed, it was him being glorified. And we see Jordan Peterson getting, you know, fired from his position, and then he blows up as the single most requested professor of the last year or two for speaking engagements and whatnot. And you know, here's the guy who took over Leary's job at Harvard using the exact same stunt as Leary did. You know what I mean, Hans?
Yeah, well, that's what's interesting because there's a lot of serendipity and synchronicity. In fact, I just talked to you a day or two ago on a totally different topic, and I just mentioned I watched this film that had been recommended by multiple people. I had yet to see the Bloom interview, and that's called Super Mensch. And I watched it, and you know what? I was like, this. Okay, maybe this guy is a saint, and that's the title of the show. Hagiography is a biography of a saint. And one thing to note is in a biography of a saint, right? And this could be any saint, anything from Buddha to, Saint Augustine, whatever. When you have a saint's biography, they're usually encoded. They're like mythological. There's different events that happen, and it's this mythological journey. And I watched this and I said, this is it's kind of too good to be true. And so I started doing some research. And so here we are right now, and it is, by the way, this is Indian New Year, Diwali. I think it's a second day. This is the day of the Kali Puja. So that's the goddess of destruction. So maybe we'll destroy some of these icons, not meaning to destroy them, but it
Flip their
just,
inversion right on
yeah,
them.
it's pretty interesting. So I got a little preamble thing. So why don't I go ahead and just fire up the PowerPoint here? Is that cool? Or you want
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, if you have, are you playing audio now or any audio
to?
clips?
No audio clips at this
Okay, no
point.
worries. All right, go for it.
How's my audio? Is okay?
It sounds great. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. I don't do I look like Carl Sagan.
No, not to me.
That's good. Okay, so you seeing my PowerPoint there?
I see. Yeah, now I see it. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So as always, I always, bring up a huge array of things because these things are so interconnected. And just as a caveat, I want to say that I think that anything you state should be cited. But even in doing this particular research project, I had things deleted, within 2 or 3 days. They're no longer available. Luckily, I have, image caches. And so that's kind of part of it. So this is sort of the framing, you say the intellectual framing or whatever you want to call it for the data as we get into the data. So, and this is not the show title, but this is sort of a subdivision of it, Rock Mythos, Understanding Cyclical Cultural Movements. So one thing to note, you look at any music industry, entertainment industry phenomena, you look at the artist, you see Elvis, right? Elvis, the Beatles, these guys become huge, they're in their basement, they get discovered. But the fact is that without those who are behind the scenes, none of this would happen. Okay. And so you have a production chain, you have a distribution chain that is there, right? So, for example, you may be a great artist. There's many great artists who you don't get the exposure, you don't get the shows, you don't get the name, and you fade away into obscurity. So behind the scenes, we have promoters, we have those who are promoting events that are helping to set up events, festivals, etc. PR, public relations, right? And Howard Bloom, of course, is our PR man of the day. We have managers, and that's the Supermensch, Mr. Supermensch, Flash Gordon. I'm sorry, Shep Gordon, Supermensch, record labels, and then also, of course, we have media broadcasting outlets. But actually, this behind the scenes infrastructure is really important. And I talked about this, to a certain extent in our series, but today is a little more close examination. Before we do that, I'll go back, and this is a quote. This is from Mr. Howard Bloom, we'll be listening to. He has a book, sort of paraphrase, Luciferian Movement of History. So according to Howard Bloom, history is created by mass ecstasy, right? This idea of a mass sort of ecstatic trance state that a bunch of people experience together is what creates history. That's how our history is created. And I have not read his book. I don't even know what the cover looks like. So that's a caveat, but he talks, the name of the book is, Luciferian Movement of History. It's a way of understanding history as these mass ecstatic moments, which according to these people, they happen accidentally, right? There's a lot of happy accidents. A lot of things just happen. So I have some examples here, jazz age, rock, hip hop. Well, all of these things were very defining for the particular cultures they occurred in, right? And I'm not going to get into this little breakdown I have encapsulating all this, but we look at the quote unquote jazz age, right? We have their prohibition, the flappers, women's liberation. We also have Tin Pan Alley becoming the main disseminator of song lyrics. You have a completely consolidated location, right? Where all the songs are coming from. The rock movement, of course, I think it's our new scripture, right? That's why I kind of wanted to do this show, is that our the rock movement is now becoming sort of our history that we're just doomed to repeat over and over again. But with the rock, if you look at it, you have the phase of innocence, like Elvis with his mysterious man behind the scenes, Colonel Tom Parker, if that's his real name, right? There's, anyways, rock and roll, let's get up and dance. Then you go into the Beatles, and then you have, of course, psychedelic rock, the hippie movement, and then we'll get into this stage of nihilism, right? Destruction, which actually Alice Cooper heralded, who we'll be talking about a lot, because both of these people have connections with Alice Cooper, which I didn't know, right? That's what kind of blew me away, the Howard Bloom thing. They start talking about Alice Cooper, and I've been doing all this research on Alice Cooper, and I was like, wow, so this ties in together very good, right? Very well. That's it. And then hip hop, of course. So these are ages that kind of define things. They define cultural movements, and they define usually a relationship, at least in this instance, a type of rebellion against authority, hence the Luciferian movement of history, right? And so given the prestige of, according to Howard Bloom, he's like the most amazing human being of all time. I mean, it's
according to Howard Bloom is the most amazing person of all time. Yeah, I think Howard Bloom would state that would be a fact.
Now he just starts out, I've written 6 novels, there are 6 books that are,
I worked with every cool star there ever was, and I did everything cool there ever was, and I'm so cool. I mean, that's just my opinion of. I mean, I don't know if the guy is prone to suing people for exposing his crap.
Well, he may be like that. Like I said, I wasn't familiar with him, and until I watched that link actually just earlier today. But resurrecting the dead, rolling out Alice Cooper for the next wave. The reason, this has come into my mind, into my ken, right? That's a great word, ken. My comprehension, my field of understanding is that, again, watching the Shep Gordon film, Supermensch, and thinking, this guy, he's, totally into sex and drugs, but he's painted, he's a saint. He's the nicest guy you've ever met in your life. He's actually the manager of the Dalai Lama, by the way, quite interesting. But
Howard Bloom is?
No. So it's not confusing.
Oh, Shep is Shep Gordon. Okay,
I'll just say Superman, Shep Gordon. But the funny thing is, both of these guys, right, were.
Do you want to stop sharing the screen while we're talking right now?
Sure. Let me just go. Okay, I'll finish this here real quick. Oh, that's all you guys are seeing, is that? Okay,
yeah.
I will stop that. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, let's see here. Escape. Stop share. All right, it's easy.
There you go.
Okay, yeah. So okay, I didn't realize you guys couldn't see me over that, but it's quite interesting. So not necessarily connected, but both these people are behind the scenes pivotal figures that were largely unknown. Shep Gordon, up until the movie, the documentary by Mike Myers came out, he was pretty much completely unknown. Nobody knew who he was, and it was even very hard to even get a picture of him, even though he was a major mover and shaker. And Howard Bloom, to be honest, like I never heard the guy's name until you sent me that link. But both of them are directly connected with Alice Cooper, which is very interesting, right? And again, I just want to reiterate, after watching that film, I spent a bunch of hours trying to find like the real deal on the Shep Gordon guy. I mean, is he actually this much of like a living saint? Every single link, hundreds and hundreds of pages, everything is the same talking points, the same stories, the same narratives. There's nothing there on him. You can't get any details. I've got his book right here. This is his book. They Call Me Supermensch. Okay. And this book is, there's just one example, but not to get ahead of myself. He talks about this professor, this Kriegel guy, who he said, taught this hippie class, and you had to go out and buy albums. But the guy is a lawyer who is worked for the Supreme Court. I couldn't find anything on the person he mentioned in the book. This lawyer who taught a course at SUNY Buffalo. Nothing is there. Very interesting, right? If this guy is a real person who is, this prominent of a lawyer, there's no record of the guy. There's nothing at all. I did find a guy who does sort of neurogenetics, crowd population control stuff, who's a scientist, who's of the right age to be the person he's talking about with the exact same name, but he's not a lawyer. So who knows? Anyways, I'll go back to the slideshow here real quick, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. But no, it's it's kind of entertaining here that we can and just telling the audience, I mean, this is not a massive research project. It's just kind of a point of interest, and then they ended up bisecting, and I think as we finish this out, we'll find that it's very, very closely connected. In fact, like the Jordan Peterson thing, like if I wanted to script something that would show my viewpoint, it would have been that. So let's go back to how is this possible, right? How's it? So we got two different stories. We've got this serendipitous model of these cultural movements, and then we have the other side. And so Adam Weishaupt, we look at Adam Weishaupt. Here's a quote. There's many people very positive about Adam Weishaupt. Then this guy is one of the Illuminati. This is written in, I think it was late, 18th century. This individual went by the name of Philo. Weishaupt was undoubtedly a brilliant. Nigge. Well, his name was actually Philo. His Illuminati name was undoubtedly a brilliant mind, a profound thinker. His heart was ablaze with an unmatched, selfless zeal to accomplish something great and useful for humanity, and few difficulties deterred him. So this is Adam Weishaupt, right? Now, all peace and love for the new recruits. You bring people on board, okay? So we move on just real quick to the next slide. So we have something these are pyramidal cell structures. And this is the model used by Adam Weishaupt. So he was able to actually, control most of Europe, including many colleges, seminaries, political figures. And it was through this pyramidal cell structure. And he bragged that basically he, had in his hands, just sitting in his office or his room, he could change, the face of Europe. He said he could set thousands in motion by speaking to a few close initiates. So this is how it goes. You have 5 people talk to 10, or they talk to 20, and then those 20 talk to 50, 100. And next thing you know, within a matter of hours or days at that time, you would actually have entire agenda being deployed. And just as a caveat or a side note, many of the members of the Illuminati were noblemen, and of course the whole goal of the Illuminati was to destroy the nobility, and which in fact they succeeded in doing. And of course this is all documented with was it 1785, the courier was struck by lightning, and all these documents are translated and in the archive in Germany. But one of the goals of Adam Weishaupt was destruction of morality, the state and religion, promise of personal freedom. For example, women are shared property of the state, et cetera, et cetera. But this pyramidal cell structure is one of the ways that this entertainment stuff is rolled out. So that's why it doesn't mean that everybody involved in different levels has any idea what the overall agenda. And that agenda may actually mean personal destruction. And we'll move back to the video. This is a hologram of Mr. Alice Cooper done by Salvador Dali. So Salvador Dali was, befriended Alice Cooper, and this hologram is a great way to start this out because, of course, a hologram is, our hologrammed reality that we live in. So, Jan, I'll let you go ahead now.
Well, I was just, while you were going through that, I was showing, some of the Illuminati up on the screen here and some of the connections. A lot of people think that that's just a ridiculous conspiracy theory. That's all they've been told to think of it. Adam Weishaupt is considered the founder of the Illuminati, and apparently he was a member of the Society of Jesus or the Jesuits, which I don't know where I have that connection. I'll have to find that, but he was at the University of Ingolstadt, and
he actually was. He was a Jesuit. And he was a professor. And so the Illuminati was a secret society within a secret society. So the Illuminati piggybacked upon the existing Masonic infrastructure.
Right.
And, and
On the back of the Catholic Church at the same time. Talk about infiltration, you know.
absolutely. And, part of that structure, though, that I described, right? So there's only a certain amount of information at any one of these cells. So you take out one of those cells, they won't necessarily connect to, the other cells. So the information that actually is available in the archives relates primarily, Bavaria, Germany, Austria. But the Illuminati, it had spread all the way into England, etc. And the French Revolution was brought about by the Illuminati. I mean, in terms of those who were, part of this secret society within a secret society. And it's absolutely documented. So this is not something that's speculative. This is, if you read the original documents, which I was getting into, and I won't, go through all these quotes, but this is what it reminded me of, because the whole idea was to create these mass social movements, but having certain pivot points. And then again, if you look at a promoter, if you look at a record label, right? So this one person can dictate to hundreds of other people, right?
Correct.
Same thing, your manager. And then, so this is how, one reason why this stuff is possible. Yeah, Illuminati. I mean, people say the Illuminati. Well, the Illuminati, absolutely. Of any of these sort of secret societies, it was absolutely documented, and in fact, it was discussed. You have the anti-Masonic Party around the 1840s. You have Alexander Hamilton talking about it. You have even George Washington talking about the the Illuminati infiltration, and etc. You have Robespierre, who wrote extensively about it. And what's funny, though, is that the terminology that was used in the mass media of that time to describe people who were like even Disraeli or whatever, these heads of state who were talking about the Illuminati, was witch hunt. This is a witch hunt. Okay, exactly same term used, during the McCarthy era.
Yeah, exactly. And they always compare McCarthy to the Salem witch trials, which were, of course, true. They just invert who it was. It wasn't the Christians. It was the Jewish Puritans who were the witches and casting the spell against the Christians for the next 300 years. But we saw the same thing with McCarthy, as if the same group of people wasn't promoting communism and all of this stuff and promoting all of this iniquity and everything. And then we see, the same tactic used all over the place, and that's their smokescreen. And it's just another witch hunt. Whenever you hear that, audience, that should clue you in that you need to look there, and it's real. It's just like when Pizzagate came out. It's a witch hunt. And then we have Dr. Michael Aquino, Colonel Michael Aquino, who was behind the Satanic Panic thing, and supposedly, it spurs up around him and it's all false. I think that's an inversion. I think he likely PR'd it. He was a PR man. So why wouldn't he PR his own Satanic Panic to mock people who believe Satanism is real while he's a Satanist? So why not create the Satanic Panic to then attack it and ridicule it, to then make the whole thing not look not real?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that the people, the psychologists behind the false memory syndrome, right? So you have this.
Oh yeah, hold on. I'm going to show that on screen.
They're actually they had a pedophile magazine, did they not? I mean, so
so the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. You have all these interesting people like Dr. Louis Jolyon West. He was a member of that. He's the guy that killed. He killed Tusco the elephant. He was a big MK Ultra researcher, MK Ultra Subproject 43. Worked with Stanford, worked with the Tavistock Institute, University of California, Los Angeles, University of Oklahoma. But he was a key MK Ultra doctor. He was Jewish. He worked directly with Ewan Cameron, worked directly with Aldous Huxley, ding, ding, ding. And, he was also tied to Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald, etc. That's always an interesting connection. I've found so many agents just around that. But, Margaret Singer was involved in that. And another one who is really interesting, let me see, Martin T. Orn is another one who was involved in that, and he was MKUltra Subproject 84. And he's got some really interesting talks. One I had on the Gnostic Media Logos Media website for many years about false testimony and how it can be created, and he just inverts it but this is the stuff that they're studying. And so, and then he's also a Fulbright scholar up here, and that's always another big red flag. And that's out of the U.S. State Department. And of course, Lyndon Holden Huxley, ding, 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 was largely behind that. And then, let's see, there was another one that was a member of this. Oh, James Randi. And James Randi, as some have suggested, is also tied into, some have suggested, and this is not my opinion, but some have suggested that he had ties into pedophilia and with Kinsey's pedophiles, etc. And then, of course, he debunks Uri Geller, and it's all just a dialectic, because Uri Geller was another agent for the CIA and Mossad. So they're just playing up the dialectic. And of course, Uri Geller worked with Dr. Andrea Puharic, whom I've exposed many times in many articles, etc. And Dr. Andrea Puharic was MKUltra. I don't know exactly what subproject he was on, but he's writes a book with John G. Fuller on all of their nonsense, all of their games. That's Arrigo, the surgeon with the rusty knife, and they're both obviously MKUltra employees working on all of that. So anyway, it just gets interesting when you see all of the connections behind the different players, and how here's this false memory syndrome foundation right at the core. We've got key people within MKUltra right here in this yet again.
Yeah. Well, that's classic, another technique, right? You muddy the waters. The actual stuff that's happening becomes so obscured, and you get the satanic panic, and da da da. But in another example of this, and just to say that this is a great example. Actually, I don't have the document in front of me, but bringing that up, Eric Maskowitz, who was a very famous songwriter. He wrote These Foolish Things and a number of 1930s, 1940s jazz standard pop hits. There's a memorandum marked top secret written in 1941 about how to stage atrocity photographs. He's in Canada, and they're actually shooting these atrocity photographs to get the title of the memorandum is Atrocity Photographs. And so this is a songwriter, actual songwriter. And so they're talking about how to stage the photographs, either to get replica uniforms using the snow in Canada so it looks like it's Russia, to bring in the impressionario. And this is the actual document. He goes through what he needs, how it's going to be difficult, what's required, how we can do it. The photos we have aren't good enough, etc. So again, we have the songwriter staging atrocity photographs, staging these events. But as we go into Mr. Alice Cooper, though, and again, this is a serendipity, just like the bio of Shep Gordon. And if any of my friends in the music world that recommended me to watch this, this is probably not the take they wanted me to get, so that's okay. But let me I'll go ahead and just share the screen here. Here's a picture of the Supermensch. Let's see, share. Okay, I lost my share screen tab here. Let's see. Okay, share screen. Here's a picture of him. Let's see here. Can you see that? Jan, you got that photo?
Yep, got it.
Okay. So this is Mr. Shep Gordon. And so it's a photo of him on an airplane. And so the film, it basically, well, he's presented again as someone whose story is mythological in terms of all the serendipities that occur in his life. So I'll just give a brief rundown of the story. So this guy, he's from Queens, New York. Grows up, normal kind of background, super nice guy, just, whatever. And then he, goes to Buffalo SUNY and he wants to save the world. So he enrolls in sociology, and then this is where it starts to get a bit murky at a certain point. As I mentioned in the beginning, the professor that he says it's still a close friend of him that taught this, I think it's called Everything, Something, and Nothing, was kind of like a sit-in, and he is a law professor. There's no record of this guy. I mean, if there is, Marty Kriegel, I couldn't find anything. And especially if he had the prominence that Gordon mentioned, there should be at least one piece of data about this guy. But anyways, moving forward, he takes the probation test, becomes a probation officer. So that's act one of his story, right? So nice, normal kid. He loves rock and roll, but he's a sociologist, wants to change the world. He's a do-gooder. He believes in the common humanity. Again, a little fuzzy time period where he takes graduate courses at the New School, which we'll get into the New School. He is a member of the Sigma Alpha Mu fraternity, which is one of the only few pieces that I was able to glean, and that we'll talk about that a bit later. But then, okay, so here what gets interesting. He gets a job, takes a probation officer exam, wants to help the wayward youth of the United States. First day on the job, just moves to LA, right? So the guy's 23 years old, 24, something like that, moves to LA. First day on the job, he has slightly long hair. So when he gets there, the wardens say, let's go play baseball. So he goes out there and all the kids come out, the wardens disappear, and then the kids beat him with baseball bats. So the 16-year-old kids, whatever, beat him up with baseball bats. He decides to quit. He leaves. Same night, he drives and stays at this Hollywood hotel. He just picks a random hotel off the freeway. He goes in there and he takes LSD, sitting in his room, trying to decompress. And he hears this woman screaming, and he runs outside, and it's Jimi Hendrix, making love or effing, I'll try not to swear, Janis Joplin outside in public by the pool. He walks up and says, "Stop that." And Janis Joplin punches him in the face. So he's been beaten, not only been beaten up by baseball bats, by kids, by the wardens, because he's a long hair or whatever. Maybe there's the embedded thing. He's a different ethnic group. And then he's punched in the face by Janis Joplin. Next morning, he meets Jimi Hendrix, hanging out. Jimi Hendrix, they're smoking weed. And Jimmy's like, "Hey, are you a Jew?" He's like, "Yeah." He's, "Well, you should be a manager." And then next thing you know, in the room walks Alice Cooper. And he becomes the manager of Alice Cooper. No experience. Again, just out of college, just moved to LA, second day, literally. He's now the manager of Alice Cooper. And next thing you know, within a couple of years, he's a multimillionaire, goes on to manage, dozens of major acts, including like Pink Floyd, Carole King, et cetera, et cetera. And then he also starts the entire celebrity chef culture around in the early 70s. So all that's his doing. Then he becomes a film producer. And, here's his life story. And he's a Buddhist. He's the nicest guy, the most honest person you ever met in your life. He's a real hero. And so this is a story, but he's also very much into sex. So the whole in the documentary, in the book as well, that they have with Martin Sheen, he's like, he always thinks with his head, but not the one on top of his shoulders or whatever, and so they have all these pictures of him, hanging out with Hugh Hefner, whatever. So he's lots of pictures of him with nubile young blondes, blah, blah, blah. So he's and he's constantly taking drugs too. So he said, when he started smoking pot at 15, he never stopped. He's a lifelong pot smoker. And just because he's such a good person, everything just fell into his lap. And he went from someone who's a probation officer, quit their job. Next day, he becomes manager of Alice Cooper, and then next thing you know, he's
now. What's the confusion? So Shep is the manager of Alice Cooper, and then Howard Bloom is the producer. Is that how it goes?
Well, to be honest, Yana, I couldn't find Howard Bloom is not mentioned at all in Shep Gordon's biography or in the what do you call it? The film. So Howard Bloom, was new to me, like I said, but until I saw that video. And he wrote, of course, this book, slightly pretentious title, How I Invented the 60s.
It's
So
a
he's
yeah, and thank you, Jordan Peterson, for just putting this interview out with Howard Bloom so that we could analyze all of the social control because, I mean, we knew that you were involved in it, but it's really good to see how much further this stuff goes in. So thanks for putting out this interview, and we're going to show a little clip of it here in a minute.
yeah.
Thanks to Peterson. Now we don't have Peterson's permission to play the clip, but we're going to do that here soon.
Yeah. And so, yeah, when we do that, I think we want to stop and start. Will I be able to hear that when you're playing it? Or should I?
You may not be able to hear it unless you're playing it through YouTube. I think I'm not sure. Maybe you will. I'll. You know what? I think I can share the audio when I share screen, so I'll make sure I do that.
Okay. Yeah. So just moving on a little further. So, again, I'm not a hater, right? I appreciate people, this guy is a saint, but okay, I mentioned a few things, but then how did he get his fame? How did he do it? Well, he managed this artist. Well, actually it was called the Alice Cooper Group, right? So Alice Cooper was somebody, and that's why the title of the show, I'll go ahead and share some pictures here of Mr. Cooper. Let's see here, meeting. Okay. Share screen. Okay, I'm not a technotard. Technotard. That's a discriminatory comment. I'm so sorry. You can see that, right? So we have this picture.
No, you're not sharing screen yet.
Okay, did say share screen? Okay, I said that. I jinxed myself, man. All right, share screen. It's not my fault, man. I had as I was told you earlier before we were doing this, is I had not only had some of these pictures disappeared off the web, but my internet actually shut down on my computer. I just finished talking to you. I was trying to do some research for the show, and my internet stopped working. Anyways. So here's Alice Cooper again. This is the classic PR photo. This is Alice Cooper with Salvador Dali. And we see this is a human brain. He's wearing the pearl necklace, the queen. This is a picture. I'll get back to that later. Another picture of Alice Cooper, Vincent Furman, Alice Cooper with his snake. Okay. This is another picture of the hologram that's made. And and that's why I thought it's interesting. This again reminds me, I want to put this in everyone's mind that when I talk about they have the sacrificial chicken where after every show Alice Cooper commits suicide or is killed, right? After every concert, either has his head chopped off, is hung. This is us. This is the audience. That's not doing to him. This is a reverse, right? Like the chicken. Okay. So $1 Billion Baby. Here's the cleansed cover of $1 Billion Babies with the smiling photo. I'll go back to the original, which luckily, like I said, I have a web cache. Otherwise, that photo is scrubbed off the web. Another picture of Alice Cooper with the snake in the rose. Okay. This is a screenshot when I tried to find $1 Billion Babies cover. It's gone, right? You see the new cover, this nice little happy green emblem, or there's the one where the dollar bill and they're all smiling. But the actual photo with the nude little girl is rather disturbing. Okay, there we go. That's that. Stop share. So let me just go over Alice Cooper a little bit. So he basically was the father of shock rock. Okay, so he was the person that created this idea of just breaking taboos. In the most brutal way possible. The name of the band, the Alice Cooper Group, was just this transgender thing. No one in the band was gay. It was just a way to shock people. But he was Frank Zappa was interested in signing him to his label, Straight Records, and this is why they needed a manager. And according to Gordon's book, and according to the film and other sources, after hanging out with Jimmy, and somehow the next day he managed to have kilos of weed and LSD available in his room. He's going to work as a probation officer. He just came to Los Angeles. This idealistic youth gets fired and then suddenly is in this secret hotel that was only known about by the rock stars. It was kind of a dive motel, but this is absolutely true. All these different rock stars stayed there. So he just happens to go there, and then somehow he managed to get this huge supply of weed.
Yeah, it's the typical CIA slapsticks serendipity story.
Yeah. So Alice Cooper, like Jimi Hendrix just tells him, oh, you're a Jew, you should be a manager. He's like, okay. And then Alice Cooper or Vincent Fernay walks in the room. I need a manager. And Jimmy's like, here's your guy. And Alice Cooper's like, how do you know I can trust you? And he opens up the drawer of his, of his dresser, and he takes out a huge, 2 or 3 pounds of weed, hands it to Alice Cooper. And I guess they never had a signed contract in their whole career. Those two together never had a signed contract. I think that's actually true. And they ended up splitting royalties 50-50. But anyways, so Alice Cooper, he began to manage Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper was the most hated act in all of Los Angeles, right? I mean, they not only did they just suck, right? They sucked on such a level that it's hard to comprehend, but they were offensive. They offended the audience. And so, Gordon is getting them these gigs, right? All these gigs, and every gig. I mean, a great example is, sold out show. The Doors are headlining at the height of their fame. Alice Cooper opens the show. The band is so bad, the entire audience leaves and don't even see the main act. That's how bad they suck. Okay. They just sucked. I mean, but also they're offensive, right? They did everything possible offensive. So part of his arsenal that was used, and Alice Cooper, well, again, let's separate. Originally was the Alice Cooper group. Then Alice Cooper fired the original band and became Alice Cooper himself. But the band itself was known as the Alice Cooper Group, and then it, moved on. But they used to wear costumes. They used to wear sailor suits with mascara. The first album was called Give Me Some. They're all wearing dresses, whatever. And this is 68. Remember, it's way before the punk scene, way before New York Dolls. But at that time, it was incredibly shocking to the morals and ethos. And again, I mean, people, there was actually Bill Graham. He actually turned the power off on Alice Cooper when he started performing. He sucked so bad. He's like, get these assholes off stage, turned off the power. I mean, they were hated. Okay, moving on. So they used, again, sexual ambiguity, perversion, and violence as their selling points. And again, it wasn't like they were like a hot act, right? It wasn't like people liked their music. It was like people.
It's like modern art. It's only for the shock value, not for the artistic quality. It doesn't show your talent. It just shows that you can, spew degeneracy.
But yeah, again, but at the height of the flower power era, right? 1968, and everyone's all whacked out on LSD and anything goes. They were hated by the fans. Everybody hated them. Everybody. Okay. But so the essence of the promotional technique, which he says in the film, he said, the one thing I learned in college, right? I learned in college, which basically, you read his stories in college that he never went to class and just managed to graduate, blah, blah, blah. But I learned that the only way to create cultural change is to use sex, violence, perversity, or moral degeneracy. And this is how you create cultural change and get people's attention. Anyways, so, and they used, they wore women's clothing. And so this is the first time you have male musicians wearing female clothing, particular eyeshadow pattern, and fingernail polish. And so their big breakthrough, the big breakthrough moment of, again, Shep Gordon, he's a Buddhist saint, a living hero, was when
a Buju, right?
A Buju, yeah, that's what they say in the film. I'm bringing that up only because it's so foregrounded in the film. That's not, I'm only saying
that means a Buddhist Jew.
Yeah, the only reason I'm not, being discriminatory, super mensch, the whole thing is that his ethnic identity is foregrounded in the film. So that's why I mentioned it.
I mean, just about every Jewish person I've ever known, they tell you that they're Jewish in the first 10 minutes or so of meeting them.
Yeah. Well, let me just go through a brief history of Alice Cooper. So anyways, so they're touring around, right? And their albums are flopping. Everyone hates them. They're losing money. And so this, just an example from, Mr. Gordon's own words, is what they used to do. They would stay in a hotel. They'd write a bad check for the hotel bill, And then when the manager came to them, they smash the windows, jump out of the windows of the hotel, and go to another hotel, go to another restaurant. The whole time they're just writing bad checks. That's how they're paying for their tour. Um, and so then there's a scene where like one of some famous star and says, the reason I know Shep is one of the greatest men I ever know is after that, about 5 years later, he wrote everyone a check to cover that tour. Well, dude, you're writing bad checks, you're jumping out of windows, you're promoting this artist that
He should have
not
been
only,
in jail as a fraud, not like 5 years later. Oh, it's cool, even though I screwed all these people over for all this money.
yeah. So anyway, so Alice Cooper goes on, and where he got famous was they got a gig opening for John Lennon, and that's the thing. Like this guy, no management experience, suddenly, jumps up. And by the way, well, I'll get back to the act. It's part of the real story that I've been able to figure out, because a lot of this stuff is smoke and mirrors. But anyways, John Lennon is doing his first solo concert after the Beatles. He gets they're offering him $100,000 or something to organize the show, and he says, "I'll do it for free if you give my band, Alice Cooper, the primo opening slot, right? The one act right before John Lennon. And this I think is in Canada, right? Or something. So he gets out his band that's just sucking ass, flopping, not only totally zero talent. To call him a singer is just to like, call my dishwasher, I don't know what I call my dishwasher, but I mean, it's just, I'm trying to,
it's like calling a beagle an opera singer or something.
yeah. But anyways, so John Lennon has got this tour, and this is, first solo show again after the Beatles. It's this peace and love, world transformation. So Alice Cooper comes on, and Shep Gordon, this saint, throws a live chicken onto the stage. Alice Cooper sees the chicken, throws it into the audience. The audience shreds the chicken and throws the chicken back at the band. They're covered in blood. The headlines the next day are Alice Cooper, bites head off chicken and drinks the blood during the show. After that, they become famous. And then they have their song, 18. I'm 18. I'm a boy and I'm a man. Suddenly they're million seller, artists. And then, the rest is history. But basically, they go on, right? So he continues, Alice Cooper, mediocre. I mean, mediocre, like I said, it's like, mediocre, you can't, it's worse than mediocre, right? It's just abysmal. And as an aside, there's a new Ian Chapman, who's a very respected musicologist, has a new book out called The Listener's Guide to Alice Cooper. Like, so this guy's a musicologist. You need a listener's guide to this guy's music? But he goes on through a whole cycle of degeneracy and perversity. The fourth album called Killer, song called Halo of Flies, of course, Christ Being Dead, other song about dead babies, the mother murders her children. And then he started on his stage show, not only committing suicide, hanging himself, having his head guillotined. And as an aside, when he broke big, you have a lot of these young teens, dressing like Alice Cooper, modeling him. You have several cases of kids hanging themselves after seeing an Alice Cooper show because they want to be like their mentor, their idol. So he has, he would murder these. He had these like baby, little dummies, and like cut the heads off the babies, and the blood would splatter on stage. So this is a positive, charming music that he's communicating. And so, yeah, the first album, it's totally flopped. Pretty's for You. They're all dressed up like, little pre-present girls. And then he has a whole album celebrating necrophilia. I Love the Dead, Cold Ethel. Okay. And then, so yeah, during the $1 Billion Babies tour, as I mentioned, he would have his head, had his head cut off. And the whole thing was, it was just showmanship. It was just Broadway. It was vaudeville. It was just like watching a horror movie. No harm done. So keep that in mind when these guys, when not only Shep Gordon, but when we listen to the Jordan Peterson stuff, where they talk about how this is shaping the minds of the people are identifying with this. It creates almost a spiritual connection between the artist and their audience. And the artist has a responsibility, which is what Mr. Bloom states. So this is what this guy's doing. And okay, and then basically, so the horror film, then they talk about Alice Cooper's, troubled time. He becomes an alcoholic and he can't separate his persona, Alice Cooper, from this shy, teacher's pet, nerdy kid. And so this is like troubling him. And then, of course, he's hanging out with Bob Hope on the golf course. He writes a book about golf. He's just, the whole thing he says, it's just a joke. It's just fun. But the whole thing is experimenting with homosexuality, perversion, transgenderism. So all this stuff is promoted. And in fact, we see, again, the punk movement with the New York Dolls. Same thing. They're tough guys wearing women's dresses. The whole thing with the Sex Boutique, Malcolm McLaren, it's all transgenderism, all that stuff. So this is being pushed. That's 4 years later. This is 68. Okay. So and again, and then of course we have Marilyn Manson, who is,
I'm showing him do the whole chicken thing right there on the screen,
yeah,
and these guys all just laughing it up,
yeah. But the other thing is that how he made it big in Europe. This is a good story. Is that Shep Gordon, again, with no money, breaking, writing bad checks, suddenly manages to book Wembley Stadium, 50-60,000 seat arena. They've sold 10 tickets, and so he hires the Beatles, the guy who did the PR for the Beatles, to work for them. And they have this picture, which was in Rolling Stone. You may put that up, where he's naked with a boa constrictor covering his genitalia. And they get a truck with this as a billboard. And they go drive around downtown London with this truck, the picture of Alice Cooper. And because of this PR stunt, they managed to sell out Wembley. And, and then he's, of course, a superstar. And again, he even violated, legal codes. He got his, I think, 18, the song 18 on high rotation in Canada because they recorded in Canada and said he was a Canadian artist, so they had to play it. Blah blah blah. So lots of different kind of fudging.
And you and I have, exposed that that's how you make a song popular, and the audience thinks it's organic because of their requesting it, when in fact it's the other way around. The radio stations repeat it over and over, and that's what makes the songs popular.
Yeah. So let me show you the actual cover for Billion Dollar Babies, which is scrubbed from the net. Okay, I'll just share screen here real quick. And all right, there we go. Seeing something there? Right.
Not yet. Okay. No, you're not sharing it yet.
You're sharing now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let me just move here. All right. Okay, so that's the real cover. I just did this quickly. So this is the second sanitized version of the cover. So notice you see the bunnies, you see the money, that the little girl was the daughter of his PR person. So that's the sanitized cover, and then the new rollout again is this green thing with no image on it. Here's the actual cover, which is pretty disturbing, to be honest. And I'm sorry, it's not, maybe a little blurry.
Oh,
notice you have a naked female infant with genitalia exposed. Look at Alice Cooper's expression. Look at the expressions of the other band members. It's pretty
and
twisted.
they're all holding rabbits. Let me just pull up Pizzagate terms really quickly. I was wondering if any of them had to do with rabbits. I'm sure that it's got to be something in there, But chicken means young boy. Interesting. So they're tearing apart young boys.
Yeah. No, that it's quite interesting. So anyways, so both these guys, right, have recent rollouts, right? These are very wealthy, powerful people who were pretty much completely obscure behind the scenes, and now they're getting a new voice. Obviously, the Supermensch film with Mike Myers directing it, is you can watch it. It is what it is. But
do we want to watch it? Is it worth watching?
I mean, it's okay. It just, they show a lot of good footage, but the whole thing is they just keep reiterating, okay, he can't settle down because he's, and I think again, Martin Sheen is like, I think he's hung like Godzilla, so it's just, and just kissing this guy's ass like endlessly. I mean, okay, maybe he could have made me a star. I effed up. But anyways, so here's okay. We go to the first weird thing is that this guy, he did study sociology and he attended the New School to do graduate work in the New School. Um, so even if this is all just serendipity, right? I'd like to get some more information um, on this, but we do have, okay, so the fraternity he was in, the Sigma Alpha Mu fraternity, has been shut down on multiple campuses, connected with drug trafficking, rape, etc. It was actually a Jewish only fraternity until 1953. But we have the New School of Sociology. Okay, so what if you want to look at the transformation? Okay, so going back to the beginning, right? The rollout. You have this, the summer of love. You have this idealism. We can change the world. It's very hard for people to understand the trauma that happened, right? I mean, people. It's that no, I mean literally. I mean, they thought we're going to change the world. This is, it really was a time of, at least, on a surface, so to speak, of, okay, we're going to transform the world. This is all wonderful. You have the crash of the 1960s, of course, with Altamont. At the same time, the LSD supply is being changed to STP, where people are having psychotic trips. Then you have the movement of hard drugs, and then you have this total nihilism, the shattering of idealism, and you have this real kind of period of wreckage around 1970 on, right? So you have these former hippies. Not only is the idealism failed, but and many people are permanently insane after taking STP, distributed by the Grateful Dead through their LSD distribution network and other venues. But you have this shattering of idealism and hope, and so this creates nihilism. Now you notice this new musical direction, which again, Alice Cooper is the precursor for punk rock because it's nihilistic, right? There's not really any meaning behind it. You're just shattering values. At least, again, we can critique the 60s all we want, and we have. But, the fact is that, there at least there was a patina.
And for those in the audience who haven't seen Hans and my other 40-some shows and whole series exposing the music industry, etc., you should go in and at least watch our series Music, Mind Control, and Psychobiology, and probably also The Secret History of FM Radio.
Yeah. So getting back to the part of the actual story, right? So like I said, I could find very little on Gordon. I did manage to bring up, about his fraternity. So there's one interview of somebody, this guy Dennis Dunaway, who is a bass player with the Alice Cooper group, and there's a few things in here that give you a bit of information. I'll just read a quote here. I had read that your manager Shep Gordon and his partner Joel Greenberg were at a motel where the Chamber brothers were staying, and one of the Chambers brothers said, "Hey, you guys are Jewish, you ought to become managers." In Alice's book Golf Monster, he says that Jimi Hendrix was at poolside and said, "Hey, why don't you guys become managers?" I have this idea that when Alice was writing Golf Monster, somebody came to him and said, "No one remembers the Chambers brothers used Jimi Hendrix." So this mythos, right? This whole story of Jimmy and Janice having sex at poolside, but it looks like it was actually the Chambers brothers staying at the hotel. He had this guy, Joe Greenberg, graduated with him, was a psychology major. So that we have a sociology major and a psychology major. Both these guys end up in LA, so that he got fired from his job. His partner's already there. Partner just drove up from New York City to Los Angeles with 3 kilos of weed. I don't know, but so there's a red herring. Joel Greenberg, according to this, again, this is the answer from the guy in the band. Well, if you want the truth, which is what my book is all about, I find the truth to be more interesting than fabricated stories. Personally, even though Jimi Hendrix is a more interesting person to name than my wife. But Cindy Smith, Noel's sister, is the one who found Joe and Shep Gordon. She's the one who got them to be our managers within a 3-day deadline. After we had Frank Zappa said he would sign us to the label, we had 3 days to find a manager. Well, she found Joe and Shep. They did arrive at the Landmark Hotel in Hollywood, where the Chambers brothers live, and Hendrix was there a lot. Janis Joplin was there a lot. A lot of recording artists stayed there because it was so unassuming. If you drove by and looked at the hotel, you'd never think in a million years that Jimi Hendrix would be there. And that's why they stayed there. And we knew Jimi Hendrix back then, and we knew the Chambers brothers. But okay. And so basically, according to this guy, These guys were like New York hustlers, like trying to hustle everybody. They're there on the street hustling people. She saw them. They came in. She had a hippie boutique. I mean, I can read through the whole thing. The Lenny Bruce Memorial Show, and then they basically got these guys to become the manager of the band. And okay, um, okay, so I'll just skip ahead.
Don't forget, we want to play this clip of Peterson and Bloom too.
Okay,
we're already at 1 hour, by the way.
Okay. Well, let me just stop there. But so already we have another person, according to this person, Joe or Joe Greenberg, but also has different names. Again, so it's a little weird. These guys you go by different names. This guy is a real person. You know, I have his bio. You know, I can send that to you. But basically, this guy was actually the one doing the legwork and booking the gigs, right? And so Shep Gordon got it. Okay, he took all the stardom. But notice we have this mythos created, right? This story. Not only is it kind of hard to believe, but it appears, at least according to the people there, you know, the Chambers brothers were not, obviously Jimi Hendrix is far more popular than the Chambers brothers. And so you have the story of Jimi Hendrix having sex with Janis Joplin, and then he becomes a manager. Okay, let's just move on. Let's go ahead and play that Jordan Peterson thing. We can just cut in and out. I don't know if I should play along with it on another. I could turn my mic down.
I'll share the audio here also. Hold on.
Start at 19 minutes and 23 seconds.
All right. I've got it queued up 10 seconds before that, but I'll work it out there just a second. Here we go. Share computer sound. Here we go. You know what? I'm not sure if the audio is broadcasting now.
I can hear it.
You can. I'm not sure the audience does here. Huh. Can you guys hear it? No, they can't hear it. Darn it! I'm gonna have to back it up. Hold on a second.
Okay. I'll turn my mic down. I'll just synchronize it with you.
All right. So it was at 19:20 right there. Hold on. Hopefully I can get this going correctly this time.
It is flat.
Let's see here.
It is flashing the Logos Media thing kind of in between. I don't know if people mentioned that or just me.
What's that?
It was flashing the Logos Media
well,
logo.
that's because I was switching screens there. So
okay.
I'm trying to see if I can get it to play the audio here for everybody. Sorry. I'm going to try turning that off again and see if it works this time.
Okay.
No.
Probably not. You just rage. Okay. Alice Cooper was a little bit like me when he was a kid. His mom used to dress him up in a suit every day, and he was a gawky, thin, with a huge nose. I was gawky, thin, with a huge nose. I can identify. I never wore suits, though. And he was always a teacher's pet. And the result was the other kids hated him. And he was kicked around and beaten and excluded the way that I'd been kicked around and beaten and excluded. Then one day, a neighbor was in his kitchen who was into a Ouija board and making contact with spirits through the Ouija board. So a spirit allegedly contacted her and said, I am the ghost of a witch who was burned at the stake in the 16th century or 17th century. And
can you pause it for a second?
Sure.
Just right there.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. So right there. Okay. So this story, right?
Hold on. I got to stop the share screen there. Sorry. All right. There we go.
Okay. So just briefly. So now notice this thing. Now I did read that same thing where Alice
we're so high level studio around here after 10 years of doing the show.
Yeah. Hey, but I did. I read, that's one of the things I read. Alice Cooper said, I can pull out the book here, but he said that he actually was using the Ouija board himself. So again, so the name came from a witch in the 17th century that it was channeled through the Ouija board that told him, you know, if you take this name of the band, you'll become a star. So here we see one of these points, right? The next point is that basically in his bio, it says Alice Cooper's father was a preacher. You see what Howard Bloom has to say. But anyways, just go. Okay, keep playing.
All right. I'm going to have to just keep going back and forth with the microphone here.
You pointing to Alice I'm pointing to, his name was Vince Fournier at the time, pointing to Vince, you are my modern reincarnation. And my name is Alice Cooper. Now, when Vince Fournier went on stage and addressed with mascara at a high school talent night for the very first time, playing his own music, chopping up baby dolls with an axe, which is the more real person? Vince Fournier, the shy little kid dressed up in a suit who gave apples to his teacher, or Alice Cooper, the person on stage who comes to life with an ecstatic identity that makes him a surfer on the back of those mass passions, those mass exhilarations that make the forces of history? Well, Alice, of the two, they're both real people. And they're both inside of Vince Fournier. But the one that's in there that has the greatest passionate intensity is the Alice Cooper, not the Vince Fournier. And that's why, though he had been picked on, and none of the...
I just want to stop right there because he's obviously talking about these made-up personalities that they summon from a satanic witch, make-believe witch from the 1600s, from the probably from the fake Salem witch trials that were put on by Harvard and the Royal Society and the Jewish Puritans. I mean, it's all the same thing, repeat, but summoning this fake persona, and then he says, well, they're both real. His real person, whom he's born as, and then Alice Cooper too.
Yeah, and so keep in mind, right, that notice, just to call people's attention, right? Notice the reverence, the when he discusses Alice Cooper's music, right? It's not only garbage, but it was an incredible force of social destruction. Okay, it's poison,
and that's the only reason why he's praising it so highly, because that's the only real value it had, as a destructive one used by those who want to destroy genteel culture and moral, to promote moral decay.
Yeah, but also note that we have another mythos, right? So we have this Ouija board, and then the spirit of the dead witch says, you're my reincarnation. My name was Alice Cooper. And then but here's another thing is, again, the band was called the Alice Cooper Group. So until 1974, Vincent Fournier was not known as Alice Cooper. It was the Alice Cooper Group, and they all wore drag. They wore band uniforms. They used to dress up like little pedo boy sailors or whatever. Great, yeah. Okay, we can hit the.
Good grief! Yeah, hit the note on pedo boy sailors. All right.
Kids in his school had liked him. The minute he finished his first performance, all the football guys who used to beat the crap out of him surged down to the foot of the stage and volunteered to be parts of his band. And when he was super famous, some of those guys were still mainstays of his band. We carry many selves around inside of us, and my job
just pause it.
Was to find.
That's right. It's inconvenient. Real quick. So what he just did is juxtapose temporality. So he's playing at a high school dance. You're not going to be able to cut up a baby in 1960 or whatever that was. He was early. America was very conservative. You're not going to do a show. Who was his band? But so he cut up a baby at the high school auditorium. At that time you did that, you'd be thrown in jail. You'd be arrested. So notice this weird thing. So all the football players and jocks rest to join his band. So we have these mythos created, right? Just again, keep that in mind. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Where'd it go here? There we go.
Find people who deserve to be iconic, and then to explain to them. First of all, I will not. If you think that I, as your publicist, am going to fashion an artificial mask, an image, and through that make you a star, I'm going to get you an appointment with my best competitor immediately. You'll be with him in hours. If you're going to work with me, you have to understand something. The music you make is about human soul. That comes from the very soul of you. And what happens to you when you go out on stage and feel as if yourself leaves you and you are danced like a puppet, or like a puppet on a string, like a marionette on stage, the force that moves you, that's one of the gods inside of you. That is your soul. And what you're experiencing with that audience is a soul exchange. If you're willing to put up with the fact that music is not about
a soul exchange, that's one of the gods. Which god? One of the gods.
One of the gods inside of you.
It's not the god of truth, that's for sure. It's not Logos.
Yeah, but this one thing I want to call attention to is this idea of soul exchange, right? Now, of course, this is a bit more on the esoteric side, but one of the things is if you summon, at least in esoteric belief, you can summon entities that these are, disembodied astral demons will become attached to the people in the audience. They'll be attached to their,
Like
like,
that, who was it? Justin Bieber doing the Prince thing, or
no, I'm talking about, like, say you go to an ayahuasca ceremony. And the only reason I'm saying this, I know people that are, that have lost their minds because
I
of,
know people that have actually seen spirits and stuff come to. And didn't you see Baphomet once? Like,
oh
wow.
yeah, no, that was, I mean, I saw lots of spirits, man. And the thing is that these entities, the whole point is that when you go into this ecstatic trance state he's talking about, and again, going back to his book, Luciferian View of History, the ecstatic trance state is what creates movements of history. So what you're doing, it's not a soul exchange with the artist. He's already stated that Alice Cooper is being possessed by a god within him. There's now a soul exchange between you and the audience. What does that soul exchange mean? It means that Alice Cooper is summoning demonic entities which are feeding and attaching to the souls of the audience. That's what that's a translation of what he's saying in these very positive terms. So this is, again, in sort of occult or demonic circles. If Kabbalah or whatever, you're summoning a demonic entity, you have to have, all these protective mechanisms. Then you could control the entity. If you don't, then that entity is going to control you, especially if it's a mass public event. In a sense, they're feeding the souls. The translation of what, at one level. Well, I don't think he's cutting the heads off babies. I mean, I don't think we need to go that deep if this is what they believe again. And this is Howard Bloom and Jordan Peterson, this saint guru self-help guy, positive thinking. So he's saying that, Alice Cooper is going to be being danced. He's going to be possessed by a demonic entity. And then what's going to happen is the audience is going to go into a trance state. This demonic entity is going to feed off the souls, or entities plural, is going to feed off the souls of the audience members. Okay, that's what he's saying. Okay,
and we haven't even gotten to the new school for social research.
Yeah, well, you just keep going here with the video.
I know. It's just we got so much material to cover here. So here we go.
Music is not about product. Music is not about downloads. Music is about the exchange of human soul. Then I will work with you. And
that's quite the statement for a Zionist atheist Jew.
Yes, it really is.
Soul in that manner. That I listen.
Now, and at 2 minutes in this video, Howard Bloom admits he's a Zionist atheist Jew. Now, first off, a Jew is somebody who rejects logos. Period. But then he's saying he first you have to recognize God to have the antithesis. So then he's the antithesis of God by being an atheist. So, and then he's a Zionist. So we know he's promoting Zionism for an apartheid theocracy, that's based on racism in the Middle East, all of these things. But, and so Jordan Peterson actually repeats this. And then,
Jan, I just want to call your attention to the whole thing is that, this guy starts off like, I'm a scientist, I'm this, but I'm also an artist. And I'm like, I'm Michelangelo. And he's like, but he said, I stopped studying. Well, he said there wasn't neuroscience in the 1960s. I don't think that's true. He said, but I decided that the graduate world would have cramped my style because I wanted to study, again, this mass ecstatic transformation. And then Jordan Peterson keeps bringing it up. He's like, I just see this dichotomy in your soul. You're this rationalist, this scientist, this great achiever, and yet you're yearning for the divine and you want to capture this divine spirit. So this argument, he brings this up, continuing through the interview, like, how do you do it? You're not only Superman, but you're Batman.
Yeah. And a Zionist atheist Jew, those are all redundant terms, anyway.
But the whole point is atheist. Okay, keep going from that.
All right.
If I wanted to script an interview, this is what I couldn't even come up with stuff that was this.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we got to thank Jordan Peterson for putting himself on the chopping block for us to expose him and this other guy.
Okay.
When I was a kid, and still now, especially that record, "Welcome to My Nightmare," which I think is an absolute classic. There's a couple of pop songs on it, which I think, record companies did that a fair bit on concept albums. You know, they'd throw a pop hit on there, but
Right.
as a concept album, it's brilliant and it's really well arranged and it's really like not horrifying exactly, because that's not exactly right, but it's unbelievably dramatic, I would say,
Right.
theatrical in the best way. And I really think it's a work of genius, that Welcome to My Nightmare. So, and I had no idea that was Alice Cooper's background, although I did hear that he was the child of a minister. Is that also correct?
Oh, no. His father was in the aerospace industry in Arizona.
Oh, okay. So
Big aerospace territory. Right. But a lot of the kids who were
You
turned
pause
on
it right
by
there.
Alice Cooper and were turned on by other.
Yet another father or son, musician involved in the military-industrial complex. What the heck happened to the radio or the video there? There we go. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. And what's, fascinating is that not only is Jordan Peterson gushing about, again, Howard Bloom, I guess I could talk about lots of things I've done and just ran, but again, the opening of the interview, like I said, this is the most, he's like, not only, he said like the king of Dubai named his racehorse after my book, and then he just keeps, but anyways,
he's like cooing at himself in the mirror, like a bird who like looks in the mirror is like coo, coo, it's just like, wow. He probably, I'm going to say it. This is just my opinion. He probably masturbates to photos of himself.
It probably does, man, but he's got to take a lot of Viagra to do that, I'm sure. But, it's like a wet noodle. All right. Welcome to my nightmare. There you go. But also, okay. Now, as we go on further with this, right, just a little bit, just notice that, okay, we're not, now say like music I like, we say like Bach, or even, okay, I like Jimi Hendrix. So, okay, that, I could say, okay, there's something there, or, Indian classical music or something. No, as an example of this, the transformative power of music, they're citing Alice Cooper, and Jordan Peterson is a huge Alice Cooper fan. He loves Welcome to My Nightmare. Welcome to my nightmare. I think you're gonna like it. So again, keep in mind, when he's killing himself, he's actually killing you. When he's locked in the hologram, right, as this, mindless, brain dead zombie, he is also, it's what he's doing to the audience. When he kills the chicken, he's murdering the audience. He's not harming himself. So that inversion is there. But Welcome to My Nightmare. I mean, I thought Jordan Peterson was like an intellectual. I mean, so you're an Alice Cooper fan. I mean, you love that album. No, that album, what you're supposedly against, transgender, this kind of stuff, that Alice Cooper massively helped usher that in. I mean, he was like the progenitor of that stuff. You know what I mean? That's, can you play a little bit of that Alice Cooper video? Is that possible?
Which Alice Cooper video?
The Welcome to My Nightmare.
Did you send it to me?
You do. Well, okay, I'll send you a link. This is Alice Cooper and the Muppets. Alice Cooper and the Muppets. Welcome to My Nightmare. Okay, well, we can go. Why don't you go ahead and play it again, and we'll go back to that. But
hold on, I'm just pulling it up here. So okay. Here, I got it here. All right, we can only play a few seconds of this.
But again, just remember the demographic. This is going for preteens, teens. All right, that's who.
Here, let me.
Go ahead.
That does it. I'm leaving. Here's Alice Cooper.
I think you're gonna feel you belong.
Now, because that's a song, I don't want to play more than a few seconds of that clip,
Okay, but see, Alice Cooper is being marketed to like 7, 8, 6-year-old kids.
Well, and he's a vampire, and we just did a series of shows on vampirism and exposing all of that and the whole pedophile connection, and we did a show, Caleb and I did a series of shows, and we also went into werewolves. We think werewolves are the cannibals, and the vampires are the bloodsuckers. Like literally, these are, and what they're after is drinking adrenochrome in the blood that gets you high, and adrenochrome has the same effect and it's very similar in chemical composition as mescaline. So they're actually getting high. This is why the moil sucks the baby's genitals when they circumcise, etc. They're getting high off of the release of adrenaline.
All right, we go back to the interview, maybe. Should I get through that?
Yes. Hold on a second. Sorry.
But just remember, it's Jordan Peterson. It's a work of genius. Okay.
Anything by Jordan Peterson, he's everybody's hero but mine.
Well, I'm gonna listen to that because Jordan Peterson likes it. Okay.
Hold on.
Ministers, the children of deeply religious people, children of the religious right.
Right, because he's bringing out the other side of things. He was bringing out the other side of things.
Right.
Yeah,
So they're attacking religious people and bringing out the other side of things. What is the antithesis of logos or truth? It's darkness, it's Satanism. They're bringing out the antithesis. And him and Jordan Peterson are bragging about this fact. And Peterson clearly knows what the heck is going on,
Yeah, and again, notice these inversions. So, and like I said, I was doing a little bit of research on Alice Cooper, and everywhere you read, he's a son of a Lutheran minister. He's a son of a minister. So it turns out, no, he's not. His father is in the aerospace industry. But then the follow-up, Bloom says, no, he wasn't a minister, but many children of ministers, many deeply religious children and sons and daughters of, he says, the religious right were liberated by Alice Cooper. Wow.
Right, yeah, by peddling iniquity and degeneracy to kids so that they get caught into pedovore, vampiristic, adrenochrome blood rituals of some sort and murdering chickens to symbolize murdering the audience. I mean, yeah, it's like a whole Ginsburg Moloch ritual and sacrificing all the children of America to Moloch,
Yeah. All right. Yeah. You want to let's go back to that.
I'm pulling it up here. Sorry.
He's obviously the precursor of people like Marilyn Manson.
Yes, exactly. Marilyn Manson was a sort of cheap, even though Marilyn Manson was kind enough to be good to me, Marilyn Manson was a kind of cheap takeoff on Alice Cooper. Didn't have the staying power that Alice seems to have had. But the point is that one of the things that I told you, if you were going to be my client, is you don't just owe your audience your songs. You owe your audience your life. Now, Jordan, it took me 20 years to articulate what I meant by that. And it's simply that if you deserve to be a superstar, then you will become an iconic figure. And 12-year-old kids will paste posters of you up on their bedroom walls. And you will be, the concept of the trellis, you grow a tomato plant on a trellis. Well, you will be the trellis on which people grow. You will be the role model. So your life is one of the most important things that you have to offer. But I wasn't just after their superficial life.
So notice this. Okay. So what he's saying is kind of what I've been saying is that, okay. So there's a couple different levels, right? You owe, your life, right? But what does that mean? Is it what you signing a deal with the devil? Okay. But this is true. He said very distinctly, 12-year-old kids, their lives will grow up around, you will influence the course of their lives, like a trestle for a tomato plant, right? He said, the way that life shapes will be influenced by what you do in your music, which is true. Okay. So notice that true statement. So keep that in mind. I mean, that's the power and influence this stuff has. But he's acknowledging that I know that's what it does. I tell the artists that's what they do. And look who he's promoting. Okay, that's my little aside there. But I think that's a very important point to note that they're fully aware of what they're doing. It's not like there's we just did it just to make a buck.
Yeah. Well, and you got to read between the lines. But for the regular audience who just, gulps up Jordan Peterson garbage like they did Timothy Leary's, they don't get that the two are having a brag session about all of the social engineering and mind control stuff. And, it's the same crap, different day, and by the way, thank you everybody for all of your donations and support tonight. Thank you, Polygonal, and so many of you tonight who've shown love and support. Really appreciate it. We could definitely use some more support. And Hans, why don't you give out your email address so people can donate to you too?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate support. You know, you know, it helps, and I totally appreciate it. And absolute, you know, this is how this can be sustained. You know, because we don't have, you know, we don't have a voice in the mainstream, not even mainstream, even the semi-alternative media. So it's hansutter@hotmail.com.
And I put your link to your website in the show notes at hansutter.com, and they can go there and click on the donate button there too as well, I believe, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
Cool. So thanks for that. Thanks for all of your support tonight, folks. It's been a little slow tonight. You know, I think there's been about $75, but really appreciate any and all support. So the more you support and donate, the more we're able to do here. And let's go for another clip of this.
I was after this. When you sit down of an afternoon, let's say 2 o'clock in the afternoon with a blank computer screen or a blank piece of paper, and you need to write a lyric, you feel as if you don't know how you've ever written a lyric in your life. You certainly know you can't write another one again. And by 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a good day, there's a lyric in front of you. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a really, really rare good day, that lyric is so perfect in itself that it feels like it wrote itself through you. When you go on stage, if you see the pupils of the audience dilating, if you see their faces melting, losing individual characteristics, if you see their energy fusing into a collective energy rather than just individual energies, and if that collective force reaches a pseudopod out to you and hooks into something inside of you that's bigger than yourself, and again, you feel like an empty pipe, and something inside you is transmogrifying all of this energy and flooding it back down to the audience in a reverberatory circuit, and you have an out-of-body experience. You watch yourself from the ceiling as you're danced. That self inside of you that dances you on stage, that is your fucking goddamn soul. And that's...
Excuse the language right there. He's obviously damning your soul right there. Literally, you know, wow.
Yeah, this is deep, is it not, Jan? I mean, he's saying, okay, go ahead.
All right, yeah, I'll let it go.
I intend to find, and that's what I intend to introduce you to. Why? Because you are about to become an icon. And if you become an icon, you have to be a force that takes hundreds of thousands or even tens of millions of kids who feel lost in the world, who don't dare express their feelings because there are no socially acceptable words for their feelings, and who feel crazy, isolated, and alone. And you, by revealing what's deep inside of you, will validate what's deep inside of them.
So I think you had the other
Pause.
made the other shoe drop.
So just notice this. Okay, this is pretty deep, right? And this is something that, you know, again, you can't, you know, this guy is a mathematician, logician, you know, computer expert, scientist. He's talking about, he said, you know, there's a collective energy, and he said a pseudopod. They become fused into one being, and it reaches out to you, and then this energy comes into you, and then you see yourself, and you're being danced. So, you know, it's deep. You know, and to be honest, I mean, a certain degree, you say that's what's happening, but this is Alice Cooper we're talking about, man. This is not Beethoven. You know, this is not, you know what I mean? This is one of the most debased and zero talent artists ever, you know, like Kiss, but it's marketed for young little kids on the Muppet Show, you know, cutting the heads off babies, pedophilia, necrophilia. Oh, on the Muppet Show. And then the way he's describing this,
And then mocking the audience by doing the ritual in front of them, you know.
and you know, I normally try not to swear, but he doesn't say when you're dancing, he doesn't say that's your soul. He said that's your fucking goddamn soul. Notice he swore. He doesn't swear any other point in this interview. That's pretty weird. It's not weird. It's not accidental. It's your damn. It's a damnation.
And not only that, you know, when you say the GD term, what you're the reason why it's blasphemy is because you're actually damning truth. You know, and that's a whole other thing that when you study the trivium and start getting into it, you figure out the whole connection there. But why would you damn truth ever? You know, why would you ever say something like that?
Yeah, and here's the thing. What I like about this quite a bit is that this guy is absolutely acknowledging what music can do. You can influence tens of millions of people. You can implant things that will change their lives. And he's acknowledging that power. But look what he's promoting. Look what he is putting out. And of all, this guy has, I guess, done many, many different acts, but why they choose Alice Cooper as their example, just like the Shep Gordon thing. Now this is interesting. Now listen to what Jordan Peterson says. He's like, he blasts off into outer space. And so this is a great next segment here on the interview.
Here we go.
Because you're talking about that, at least in part, you're talking about that ecstatic experience as the necessary counterposition to isolation and abandonment, loneliness, and all of those things, which I think is a very reasonable way of thinking about it. It's like meaning as the antidote to isolation and tragedy and malevolence, for that matter. And I think music is, I've thought deeply about music. I've tried to figure out why it has, what it represents and why it has the effects that it has. And I think, and this is a neuroscientific view of it to some degree, and it seems to me that it's better to think about the world as something that consists of patterns rather than as something that consists of objects. So an object would actually be a pattern that sustains itself across time. That's not all that.
Very, very good insight. You get applause for that.
Well, thank you. And so then you think, well, you can even think about the way the visual system works this way. So we tend to think that there's a world out there, and then there's an image of that world projected onto our retina, and then the image is reconstructed, say, in our visual cortex, and then we can become conscious of that image and plan our actions in consequence of that. But that isn't how it works. The way it works is that there are patterns in the world, and then the patterns are shifted into patterns of light, of illumination, and then those are shifted into patterns of neural activity on the retina, and then those are shifted into patterns of neural conductance along the optical nerves, and then patterns in the visual cortex, and then those are expressed as patterns of movement. So it's all the transformations of patterns, and the meaning of a visual perception is the pattern of action that it gives rise to, which is why you need embodiment to be able to perceive. And I think the reason that music speaks so deeply to us of fundamental meaning is because it's actually the most representative art form. Because people think about it in some sense as the least representative art form. I don't think that's right at all. I think it represents the reality that exists in a profound sense beyond what our senses reveal to us moment to moment. And so it puts people, then when you're moving to the music, and you're all moving to the music, or when you're dancing, let's say, with someone else, and you're as pairs, and you're all dancing together, it's the patterns of the cosmos, so to speak, manifesting themselves as the patterns of the music, manifesting themselves as the patterns of your body in syncopation with everyone else. So it's also a symbolic representation of a harmonious and ideal society. And it is something that's beyond us. And so it's interesting. So I get it. So partly what you're saying, if I understand you, is that for you, the ecstatic collective experience that was associated with music, for example, and pop music perhaps, was, you could see it out very clearly as the antidote to painful isolation. And I mean, one of the things that struck me as near miraculous about music, especially in a rather nihilistic and atheistic society, is that it really does fill the void that was left by the death of God. And it's partly because you cannot rationally critique music. It speaks to you, it speaks of meaning, and no matter what you say about it, no matter how cynical you are, you cannot put a crowbar underneath that and lift it up and toss it aside. And so I also think that's why music was such a powerful.
So that's pretty profound. Before I just want to call attention to one thing he said. He said all these people that are lost, isolated, alone, fragmented, this shows them their inner feelings. Really? Cutting heads off babies, necrophilia. Welcome to my nightmare. Welcome to my nightmare. I'm just going to read the lyrics for that. Okay, like I said, what they're saying, I am not. Mostly what he's saying is pretty much. That is, I think that's quite true, or can be true. But then notice, okay, we have isolation, aloneness, the death of God. Okay, then what are you filling that gap with, that hole with? Alice Cooper. Okay, here's the song. Welcome to my nightmare. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to feel that you belong. a nocturnal vacation, unnecessary sedation. You want to feel right at home because you belong. Welcome to my name. Oh, shit. Okay, I just got some BS playing there. Sorry. I got some ad. Okay. Hopefully not hearing that. I hope I didn't scare you.
I'm not hearing it.
I just got some stupid ad, but okay. Welcome to my nightmare. Whoa. Welcome to my breakdown. I hope I didn't scare you. Oh, Christ. Sorry. I'm getting some okay, here we go. All these, for some, I've got ad blocker.
While stuff. You're looking up that, Fibonacci in the chat says Jordan Peterson is making Luciferianism more palatable for sound minds by intellectualing it and transposing it with the framework of truth and logos. That's very well said.
That's absolutely true. Let me just finish the lyrics here.
For those of you, I mean, I've been saying the Peterson was on the take for several years now. I mean, I really hope all of you who write me all the time asking me, and I tell you, and you get upset because he's your hero. I hope you all are really starting to see it now. It's like everything else. I mean, he fits the same MO. And just really quickly before you go on there, Hans, I want to show him in the database here. But again, influenced by Aldous Huxley. George Orwell was Huxley's student. Dostoevsky, McGill University, where Ewan Cameron was. This is an MK Ultra school. Zbigniew Zabrinsky was also out of there, if that doesn't tell you a lot. But it's not to say anybody from those schools is dirty, but it's an MK Ultra school. And then he takes over Leary's department at Harvard, and he's in the Harvard University Department of Psychology. Back then when Leary was in, I think it was the Department of Psychology and Social Relations, or they split the two and then reunited them, split them. It goes kind of back and forth there. But, B.F. Skinner, he's another MK Ultra doctor out of that same department. Here's George Esterbrookes, another MK Ultra doctor, Dr. Henry A. Murray, one of the infamous MK Ultra doctors. These are the people that Jordan Peterson works around. A lot of people love to cite William James in his book, Varieties of Religious Experience. This is all PSYOP stuff, folks. What they do is they invert the religious experience away from truth and logos, and then they tell you about all of the psychotic break experiences from drugs, suggestogens, and et cetera. And they use that to create this, this breakdown. And what he argues is healthy-mindedness is anything that promotes degenerate views, and then and is open sex, drugs, rock and roll, and then morbid-mindedness is anybody who believes in truth is God. And so this is how Harvard and the Department of Psychology has rolled this stuff out based on William James B.S. book. And, of course, he was influenced by Emanuel Swedenborg, who was the spy for King George XIV of Sweden. And, he's, one of these key people that really influences MK Ultra. And we also see he influenced Alcoholics Anonymous here. We talked with Jana Bitzer a couple of months ago about all of that, and the tie-in with Bill Wilson and this stuff. And Bill Wilson was influenced heavily by this same person, William James here. So, it's always the same stunts. It's always the same people. It's just they repeat it ad infinitum.
Yeah, but just to clarify this, okay, so I'm going to bring up that Salvador Dali hologram because I want people to understand that this song is the nightmare of the psychic prison that you become embedded in. Okay, it's not you inside that hologram, trapped, unable to move in a fetal position. It's not me. It's not Alice Cooper. It's you. So this is a song, again, on the Muppets. This is about a psychotic break where your self is split, right? And all the self-esteem stuff, which goes to split yourself into the observing self and all that stuff. And Jordan Peterson, what he said about music, rhythms of the cosmos. Well, yes, it can. So now he's going into this sort of almost spiritual, mystical thing, but the context is this talentless douchebag. I'm sorry to use that term, Alice Cooper, Vincent Fournier. So again, listen to this song. Imagine what this is doing to 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. This can create permanent, not unless you're able to rewire yourself and become conscious. This can create psychological instability that can last a lifetime you're not even aware of. Okay, read it again. Welcome to my nightmare. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to feel like you belong. A nocturnal vacation, unnecessary sedation. You feel at home because you belong. So this is like you're in a dream. You can't wake up from the dream. Your true self that Jordan Peterson is trying to pump up, oh, your isolation. What is the song about? It's about the isolation in a psychotic break that is because it's been induced through all this type of technological, media apparatus, is not even conscious. It blocks a part of yourself off and your own experience, and it's actually closed off from your awareness. Okay, anyways, go on. Welcome to my nightmare. I hope I didn't scare you. That's just the way we are when we come down. We come down what, from drugs? They come down from the demonic plane that Alice Cooper is summoning. We sweat and laugh and scream here because life is just a dream here. Inside you feel right at home here. Welcome to my nightmare. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're welcome to my nightmare. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh. So this is the song. Again, played for the Muppets. This is, according to Jordan Peterson, a work of genius. Okay. And then we'll finish the interview. Let me just show that hologram to you guys again and just some of these images. And then again, keep in mind the context. Again, Jordan Peterson talking about, that you can actually there's energies in music. Yes, you can describe it. You can break it down. But when he's talking about the sensorium and the reality, I mean, that's it shows that you're aware of what effect you're having on people, which makes it a million times more devious. But actually, it's a clarity. I appreciate St. Peterson's honesty, and his self-help. I mean,
St.
what
Peterson.
I mean, seriously, like, this is your self-help. Oh, I'm isolated, so I'm going to listen to Welcome to My Nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, look at that. I mean, but you know what? Like, I appreciate when, they come out of the box, right? Because okay. You're talking about, so this is the hologram Dolly created. This is a representation of the audience. Okay. I think it's one of actually the first holograms ever made, 1973. And this is the brain. Look, he's got his brain manipulating the brain. He's there like as the bride or whatever, the Whore of Babylon. Okay, there's that baby picture. And this is another picture of the hologram from the front. Look at that. This is what your mind is on Alice Cooper's music. This is what's happening to your inner psyche if you don't protect yourself from that music and you experience this as they're talking about this sort of holistic, energetic exchange. This is where it's taking you. This is a nightmare he's talking about. This is what little kids, Kermit the Frog, these 5, 6-year-old kids are being exposed to. And Peterson admits that he knows what music can do. Okay, go ahead back to the interview. But I think that's just amazing that he's doing that. It's just mind-blowing, but it's cool because it at least gives us credibility, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Cultural force in the 60s and the 70s, and like an overwhelmingly powerful force.
So the other element that's very important to this is music is the voice of a subculture. So when you tell 100 million kids who felt utterly isolated and alone that their experiences had not been reflected in the experience of any other person on earth, that in fact they are not alone, they are a movement. You give a subculture a voice. And you can see that when I finally got into working with music, one of the first things I did was work with country and Western music. Now, Jordan, I worked with a company called Dot Records. I was hired by Gulf and Western to found a public and artist relations department for their 14 record companies. And one of those companies was Dot Records. And Dot Records was number 3 on the country charts. And that it was a third place company. And it wanted to be number 1 in country and Western music. Now, when I was a child, when I was about 3.5 years old, I woke up on a Sunday before anybody else in the house had woken up, went out to the front room where there was sunlight, which I didn't get to see as often as I'd like, and turned on the radio. And because it was 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that, what I got were farm reports and country and Western music. This was in 1946 or something like that, or 1947. And I immediately knew that that music was alien to me, and I knew that it was the music of another subculture. It would not necessarily be kind to the subculture from which I came. So
Okay,
I
it's
never
just
liked
Jan,
country music.
we can okay. So it goes on. I think we've got enough there to get the point. And again, the fact that, not only again in this Supermensch film and the hagiography of these behind the scene guys, the whole film is only showing Alice Cooper. He managed all these other people. The whole, it's almost only solely about Alice Cooper, say Howard Bloom. And so the level, Jordan Peterson, I mean, I'm just shocked, even that I know he's kind of full of it, but just what you're supporting this, either demonic possession or, psychosis or whatever. So people are isolated. Now you're going to go, and then you're going to have your mind further fractured to there's parts of you that are stuck in. This is what it is this hologram. Part of your actual self is trapped off from your conscious awareness, and you're never going to be a whole human being. It's like it's not, you're not obviously going to be, most people at least won't be on the surface psychotic, but this is like soul warfare. And I actually, Jordan Peterson is actually citing, this is Justine here by Marquis de Sade. And it's what he's talking about is very similar. It's just kind of a long passage. I don't necessarily have to go into it, but it's very similar to Marquis de Sade. When he talks about the vilest of things and all this, because of the imagination and et cetera, the effect it has, inducing delirium and intoxication, et cetera, et cetera. It's very it's like 3 pages, so I don't think I want to read that right now just because of the time we have. But I was just shocked that, but I'm actually happy because these guys know, like the way I understand music and what I know what it does. These guys are saying the same thing, but they're also.
You remember what was it 3 or 4 years ago before we started the Music Mind Control series, and you and I had always stayed in touch intermittently over the years. About 9 years now, and I was looking to do a show on mind control and music, and I started seeing music as a key piece of the whole thing, but I couldn't piece it together because obviously I'm no musician. I used to play trumpet and piano as a kid, but and I had asked several other people, and then you jumped out, you reached out right then and contacted me, and it was just perfect timing. And I said, hey, do you want to hit this subject? And we had already had you on for your ethnomycology work on your book in 2009, but, we ended up doing like 40 shows on this one tangent, just trying to get to the bottom of music and mind control. I mean, it's like, look how many people, how many agents, how many bands, how many, Harvard University professors we've exposed in that time. It's just phenomenal how this one thread just keeps undoing all of this stuff and how it's connected on every level into, all of this social engineering.
Well, absolutely. And just going back to, I started out with the Weishaupt, the pyramidal structure. Well, there's different levels of discourse within these pyramids. And what I mean by a pyramid is not 3 people, right? You could have, if you have, say, one record label, then you could have 500 people that are on a certain level of the music business. They may be, roadies. They may even be members of the band. They're going to have a certain level of discourse they're going to understand. So these guys are on a much higher level, which shows they understand what it's doing, but they're talking to people that are just going to accept what these 2 genius people have to say. And you say, how many people, Jordan Peterson fans, probably went out and bought a bunch of Alice Cooper albums? Of course, they scrubbed the $1 billion baby cover with the nude little girl, which is just absolutely reprehensible. But so notice that their level of discourse, if you're able to decode it, right? So we're seeing this pyramidal structure also, and these are more like culture makers. But going back to that, the thing is that this rollout, the cultural rollout stuff. I've kind of been riffing on that a little bit. And I, again, I think I see this as a potential. This is like the precursor, right? So when Alice Cooper started doing his stuff, 68, he sucked. No one liked him. But then you have New York Dolls, you have the whole punk scene. And all that is directly off of that, with the transgender and the self-abuse, the meaningless destruction, right? And just this annihilation, the self-annihilation as this beauty or purity, because there's no meaning. And he said, Jordan Peterson said, after the void, after the death of God, I'm going to fucking listen to Alice Cooper to fill the death of God in my heart, Mr. Intellectual multimillionaire Jordan Peterson. I mean, I'm sorry, that pisses me off, that this pretend, I mean, what he's doing, I mean, it shows the level of malevolence, though, that, and the glee in which they watch people, giving them a lot of correct information and spinning it the wrong way, so people are lost in their lives and they can't get out of it, and they look for guidance.
And they don't have the trivium, they can't see through, and when you have to realize, and Bay Vaughn in the chat was asking this a minute ago, how do you know who's telling the truth and who's dirty? And that's a really important question, because I personally think that almost everyone in the alt media now is dirty, that they took the money. And I've been doing the show for 10 years. I did not take the money. That I can swear to. And as soon as I figured out, like in the early episodes when I was promoting psychedelics and all that stuff, as soon as I figured out all those people were working with the CIA, I stopped and I came out and exposed it. But what you have to realize is that a contradiction is always a liar and error. There are no contradictions in nature. And always check the citations. Go to the primary citations. And if we're representing things factually, we told the truth. If we're taking things out of context or have an error, let us know. And if we're still lying about it or, refuse to look at it, then we're probably dirty. And that goes for anybody. So this is how you vet people, is just check the citations and check the claims. Is it in truth? Is it empowering you to see what's going on, or is it enslaving you and tricking you and inverting the information to fool you, to lure you in? Is it sophistry? So this is what you have to understand to be able to break free and keep free from all of this social engineering and mind control, all this MK Ultra stuff that we've spent since 2010, 2011 exposing on, every level that we could find of all of the social engineering. But this is how you have to get to it. And once you learn how to find the truth, your self-esteem will greatly improve, because, you have the self-confidence to know what's true and what isn't, based on the simple understanding that a contradiction is always a liar and error. Aha, there's a contradiction. What does that mean? And it means, just a second, it means all I need to do is go a little bit deeper into the research until that contradiction disappears. And when you have that aha moment, that epiphany moment, that's when you know you're at the truth, when there's no grammar left to go through and all the contradictions are gone. Logic is the art of non-contradictory identification. So when you hit that point, you're at the truth. And that's logic, which is, originates from the word logos, which is truth, the word, God, reason, at all. Sorry for my little rant there, Hans.
No. What I wanted to say, though, is that to your audience member, that guess what? These guys are pretty much telling the truth. I mean, they're not lying.
No, they spin it and they invert things. So I would say an inversion is a fallacy,
Well, actually, in this case, Jan, I'll disagree with you. Why? Because they're telling the truth. They're talking about the power of music. They're talking about how it's like a trellis where a youth grows up on it. And they're stating that there's like this type of energetic soul exchange, the performer is becoming possessed. But guess what? They're telling you the truth of becoming, either, psychically damaged or demonically possessed. That's where the contradiction is, when he says Alice Cooper, welcome to my nightmare, is genius. That's the red flag. The other stuff he's saying, I mean, like I said, it's very interesting. It's great to have people actually say that. In this case, what I mean by the contradiction, obviously the contradiction is that you're talking about, shock rock music that was marketed for children, that focused on you said even like pedo cannibalism and all this kind of stuff, necrophilia. So there's a contradiction, but what they're saying is true, right? In the sense that, but you have to have that level of discernment that, you know what I mean? So this is what I mean is that it's rare that they actually let things slip like, oh, no, his father wasn't a preacher. His father worked for the aerospace industry, but this music was directed for people like that. And that's probably why they put that in his bio as a fake piece of information to get kids, you know what I mean, to get into it. I don't think that makes sense. So I'm not saying, you know, he's, well, if you say Alice Cooper's a genius, well, no, I mean, that's a hard sell. I mean, I don't know. I should start, you know, I mean, genius. I mean, come on, but maybe he is a genius in terms of the mind control paradigm.
Right. Well, that's the only, I was just trying to figure out what direction that could go. Only if you're a PR social relations expert using him as spin and inversion to destroy society and family and religion and everything else that Howard Bloom even mentions in that, then he's genius. And then, you know, that gives reason for Jordan Peterson to coo about him, you know?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, though. You have to understand that, as I mentioned, these structures, right? This is a dialogue between two people probably on kind of the same level, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking.
Somebody's asking if Alice Cooper's a puppet. I don't think so.
What do you mean, a puppet? Like a Muppet?
Well, you know, like a puppet with string. I mean, like a willful dupe puppet, you know.
You know, his whole thing is, I'm just a nice guy, and you know, in the film, you know, they have Alice Cooper on the golf course in Hawaii talking about, you know, oh, I'm just this guy, I like to golf, and he has this book about golfing and all this, and he says that, oh, this is just fun, you know. So to me, I don't know, but if you're gonna do that, and you're knowing that you're aware, your manager is aware, you're the guy doing your promotion, the record label guy is aware that you're influencing the minds, you're influencing the lives of generations by what you're doing with the level of exposure you have, because people trust you. They interpret what they see on the performing stage as real. So given that level and doing that, I would have to say that, you know, he's not a puppet. He's a, I mean, I don't know. He's a Christian now, this and that. It's like that guy.
Is he saying he's a Christian now?
Yeah, he converted to Christianity, he said.
Wow. Well, if he converted, then you have to, then, you know, I mean, if he honestly repented, then you have to leave it at that. That's
I don't think he hasn't he repented for what he did. It's all just good fun. Except for he says, oh, I was an alcoholic and I did crazy things and I slept with women I didn't remember. That's what he's sorry about. He's not sorry about the mind, the level of destruction that he wrecked.
You know, I mean, yeah, it would be nice for him to reach out and say, hey, yeah, I did or I didn't. And if he did, come on the show and let's talk about it. Because, you know, that would be great. Alice Cooper, sit down. Did you really repent? And did you really become a Christian? And really, you know, because then he would be able to sit here and say, yeah, I did all of that evil stuff to destroy families. And boy, wouldn't that be a hit interview better than Jordan Peterson's?
Well, no, but he's basically like he's, you know, oh, I lived, you know, I was a drunk, I was in alcoholism, I was caught up in stardom, and I couldn't maintain relationships. That he's talking about his own little personal BS. He doesn't mention a word about what he did because he said it's just like a horror movie. It's all in good fun. It's just fun, you know.
Yeah.
And again, but just
that's that's the thing with Satanists. They lie, you know.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, not to, you know, beat a dead horse, but you know, we didn't even get to the new school and all that stuff. But
yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I thought that was really interesting, though. That you know, I'm being a bit more emotive, but when you know, when I see these guys having the knowledge that they're fully aware of what is being done, right? Because I see this, you know, this lack of self-esteem, self-hatred. That's what Alice Cooper is directed towards, is that people that have, you know, you have fragmented personality, you have all this stuff, to people with low self-esteem, or whatever you want to use the term for it. He's creating a type of inner permanent self-hatred, psychic conditioning on a mass population. To what extent that takes place for each individual remains to be said. But anyways, I know we're running out of time, but that was a super interesting.
We're only at 2 hours. I mean, you know.
Yeah. Welcome to my nightmare. I'm fired. Okay.
Alice Cooper in Hollywood Vampires, and somebody made the point that despite his repenting, he still decided to play himself in Dark Shadows, where Johnny Depp plays a vampire from Connecticut. That's a really good point,
Well,
And we already
my-
showed him playing a vampire in a children's thing with Kermit the Frog and the Muppets, my goodness.
Well, they're cleaning up his image, right? As I showed you, the album cover, they have this nice little green cover with a picture of a kid's face on a dime, not the naked baby with these leering, Satanists over it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
you kind of reminds me.
somebody's gone into the memory hole and changed Alice Cooper's background.
Well, that's what's happening with these guys, right? That's what I'm saying, is that they're wiping stuff off the internet. I mean, and that's why I'm saying that, to me, that's why I use the word hagiography. It's being set up as like this new religion, right? And they're canonized, and they just gloss over all this stuff. That it's apparent, and that's, I guess, the level. I mean, certainly the trivium is there, and most of the time these guys, like, I have the interview with Jerry Garcia and a couple times, where he starts talking about, everybody, living in a virtual world where they're no longer in the physical world. They're just wired into this giant mass brain with a control grid on top of them. And Jerry Garcia talks about that. That's Jerry Garcia, in among people of his level, speaking candidly. It's not like, yeah, dude, that was a great solo last night, man. Oh my God, did you try those mushrooms? So that's another level, right? That was a pretty bad Jerry Garcia imitation. Apologize for that. But it's fun that this, like I said, this is just, I'm sure there's a lot more there. So I just, to summarize, though, that I do feel that this being a precursor to a next wave of sort of this nihilistic type of thing, that I wonder if this is, I think what they're doing, because they're too lazy to keep recreating things, they're just rehashing all these cycles. And so, they get, now, the 60s have been rolled out like 2 or 3 times, the 80s, even 9, you know what I mean? So they just roll out these things, but then it's on an even more virtualized level, right? So it's and then you are trapped in this hologram, your little Alice Cooper hologram, where you can't even, you know what I mean? And they're just pumping the culture into your brain. So anyways, so.
Yeah, so, we talked about everything that we intended to talk about except for the New School for Social Research. Do you want to dive into that for a few minutes, or are we already, is that too much to go in for it tonight?
You know what? Yeah, just, why don't you just bring that up, just because this is, I'll just let you talk, because that kind of ties some things together.
And thanks, Polygonal Construction and I Belong in the Kitchen, for the donations just now. I really appreciate that. And please also throw some love Hans's way too. We, need all your support for all of this research that we do. That's how we're able to do it. Let's see. Okay. So, New School, sorry.
Yeah, and while you pull that up, let me just read a bit from Marquis de Sade. Okay, while you do that.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Extraordinary, you declare, that things decayed, noisome, and filthy are able to produce upon our senses the iteration essential to precipitate their complete delirium. But before allowing oneself to be startled by this, it would be better to realize that objects have no value for us save that which our imagination imparts to them. It is therefore very possible, bearing this constant truth well in mind, that not only the most curious, but even the vilest and most appalling things may affect us very appreciably. The human imagination is a faculty of man's mind, whereupon, through the senses agency, objects are painted, whereby they are modified, and wherein next our ideas are formed, all in reason of the initial glimpsing of those external objects. So it keeps going, but that's basically what Jordan Peterson was talking about, and this idea of appalling stuff. And so, of course, Marquis de Sade, we don't need to go. I think everyone's pretty familiar with who he is. So,
Satanist, blah blah blah. I just had him up on the screen a minute ago. Here, let me just go back. Satanism, he's into black magic, ritual abuse, sadism, coined from his name. Influenced George Hodel, Grant Morrison, and to influence the creation of libertine sexuality, which, of course, libertine is strictly forbidden in the Bible, interestingly. And let's see, sadism.
He's connected with the French Revolution, also Illuminati. That's why I brought him up
Yeah.
too. So go ahead. Yeah.
Nexium, homosexuality, etc. All the good connections there. So let's get down to New School for Social Research again. Bertrand Russell, Fabian Society. Basically, the New School for Social Research it becomes MK Ultra, becomes the Frankfurt School, etc. A lot of the Jews fleeing Europe get into this organization, where they're free to do their research. In other words, where they're free to do their mind control and to degrade the rest of the society, because they were kicked out for the 200th time, in a country for doing this behavior, and so the CIA and all of these organizations here in the United States kind of opened up to them. But the Club of Rome comes in here. Rhiannon Eisler is there, whom, of course, worked with Terence McKenna. And she's a member of the Club of Rome, Club of Budapest, tied directly to Gregory Bateson, one of the founders of the CIA. Of course, she's a humanist, and humanists are behind so much of this stuff. She influences Marshall Rosenberg, who creates NLP or NVC, Nonviolent Communication, but Humanist Manifesto, etc., Chalice in the Blade. Let's see here. Club of Rome, of course, people can look up that stuff, but Spiria Andrews, he's another one. He on Facebook, he's a member of this group. He was promoting all this New Age spiritualism and stuff. But Maya Deren is an interesting one. She influences Kenneth Anger, of course, the leading Satanist, and was a Ukrainian-born American filmmaker and one of the most important American experimental filmmakers and entrepreneurial promoters of the avant-garde, in other words, degeneracy. And, of course, she's also influenced by Gregory Bateson, all the typical people tied over here to Joseph Campbell, whom we've exposed many times, is working with the CIA and Stanford Research Institute, etc. And somebody even sent me an email, a physical letter a week or two ago, trying to argue that Joseph Campbell was some genius. He was just another one of these mind control guys. Bertrand Russell, Eugenics Fabian Society. He also influences the Tavistock Institute, pals with Aldous Huxley, B.F. Skinner, etc. Atypical stuff. He's influenced by I.A. Richards, who's influential in dumbing down language. Influenced Eric L. Trist, who, of course, founded the Tavistock Institute, was big behind cybernetics, which, of course, is a huge part of MK Ultra and the Macy Foundation conferences. Anyway, Eric Fromm is another one here that shows up a lot. Frankfurt School, big Marxist, influences Aldous Huxley. Sorry, you guys, for all the mentions of Huxley. I mean, you guys are, hopefully you find something other than just drinking every time I mention Huxley, because your livers are going to go out, So maybe you can buy a book or read something or whatever, because I don't want to be responsible for your iniquitous behavior here when we're trying to expose all the iniquity. So let's see, Hans Eisler, another one possibly tied to Rhiannon Eisler. All these people, here's Margaret Mead. She's, of course, the ex-wife of Gregory Bateson, who helped found the CIA again. Another one at the Macy conferences, belonged in UNESCO. She's part of Changing Images of Man at SRI, that creates all of this New Age religion and destruction of family and promotion of trans, QWERTY sexuality and, all of the eugenics, homosexual stuff that you see going on right now. That's all out of Changing Images of Man and SRI and the Esalen Institute, et cetera. They sell it as, pseudo-spirituality and all this crap. Marlon Brando, John Cage, all these people, but go in the database and check this stuff out. World Policy Institute, state superior to the individual. That gets into, there we go, Order of Skull and Bones. Again, we're back to the humanists, Edward Bernays. But the humanists, they're big behind all of this stuff. They always come up. if you come across a humanist, run the other way immediately. I mean, they're pretty disturbing people, the ones that I've come across. They're big into promoting iniquity and degeneracy and gay marriage and this kind of stuff. But let's see. Why is Huxley the fool card in CERN Hex and Tarot? I have that book, and, she's obviously a Satanist making the artwork for CERN. But, I don't know why she put him as the fool card. But regardless, it's still Satanism, and CERN is a big satanic organization as well. So you got to question the whole thing on each level. But who knows? Maybe she saw this. I don't know what the heck is up with that woman. Somebody bought me a copy of her book, but I think, in my opinion, she's dirty. Anyway, Hans, we're at 2 hours and 9 minutes.
Yeah, I guess we should probably wrap it up. I'm going to go bust out my Alice Cooper collection.
No kidding. Wow. I was just about to break out mine and some degenerate Tool CDs as well,
Yeah, and then just look at my picture of Big Brother. I mean, Jordan Peterson, the great leader.
Yeah,
And,
well, Saint Jordan Peterson, right? Yeah, the You know what? I got to give Dr. E. Michael Jones, and I need to get him back on again, but I got to give him mad props for just exposing the heck out of Jordan Peterson some months back,
Can you send me that link? Because what, just, how I Jordan Peterson, I heard, I knew a little bit about his stuff. And, and then I saw that, he was doing this initially when I saw stuff, he's doing this, he's standing up, he got fired, just kind of tended, a little bit. And then I saw, he did some lecture. It seemed pretty, I kind of half listened to it pretty good. And then I got this video of Jordan Peterson, and he's filming himself. He's on his camera and he's reading this letter. It's like it's some boring kind of humanist manifesto.
They took it down.
Oh, no.
For a while you had to prove it to see it, but it looks like they took Dr. E. Michael Jones's slaughter of Peterson down because he exposes Peter, and here's Peterson promoting psychedelics. Hey, just like Tim Leary did, by golly. And so it was the Can Answer the Holodomor question. So maybe look that up, folks, and look up Dr. E. Michael Jones' exposure of that. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that I saved that video into the database. And thanks, Caesar Psyop, for the $4.99 donation. He says, thanks, gentlemen, for the chat and great stream, especially you, Jan Irvin, for showing me reality instead of selling out like almost everybody else. And thanks for that. I really appreciate it. So, good grief, man. Alrighty, Michael Jones. Maybe we can have him on and do a whole discussion on that, and he can do it all over again, and then we'll get the video taken down from my channel.
Yeah. What it tipped me off to Jordan Peterson was, not really that into him, but he did this video and he's reading this letter on humanism. He's like, we have to become authentic. And he's just weeping. He's talking about being a man. He's like weeping like a
total beta male.
Yeah, but he's reading this really boring, pretty much inane document. And he's like, it's not even as deep as I'm saying, like, authentic. And I saw that. I said, there's something wrong with this. This crying, even if you can't read this inane little paragraph without breaking into tears, and yet you're promoting this idea of, manhood, because you have to understand, Jordan Peterson is doing what Alice Cooper is doing. Okay, maybe not on the sort of more metaphysical level of music, but he's people that are lost, that don't know what's going on. He's providing them this little scaffolding where their vines can grow, right? But they're going to grow just in their his little box there of his dead end cybernetic loop self-help system. And
well put, Hans. Dead end cybernetic self loop system, the quote unquote.
Yeah.
Oh man, if they weren't so easy to see and expose, we wouldn't expose them. But it's like, I don't know. what to do other than expose the retards for being retarded. I mean, it's like, to me, you get all these people who pretend to be adults going around lying and tricking everybody to get off. I mean, it's the utmost in decayed cognition. It's just pathetic. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
But no, I mean, the beautiful thing about that video is that, it just, they completely, well, Bloom is who he is, but Peterson just completely exposes himself, and he's right there. He's like, dude, okay, you're against, your whatever family values. Oh no, you're promoting this, he's just right there, and you can't take it back. You can't take it back. You said it, dude.
Jordanetics.
Yeah, you're screwed, man. No, not that he cares.
I agree with you. It's like, because people are always getting so angry with me that I say he's on the take, and he took the money. He got fired. How could he take the money? People always fall for that PR tactic. It's like, look, Leary was fired too. Oh well, how could LSD be bad if they outlawed it? Really? That's your logic? Well, actually, Leary went to Congress in 1966 and asked them to outlaw it for part of his PR program. It's like, he gets fired from Harvard, goes to Congress, asks them to outlaw LSD, and then parades around as the LSD guru. It's like, come on. Could he have done his job if, 1, LSD were legal, and 2, he didn't get fired, and and didn't have the image that Harvard was trying to suppress his spiritual message? I mean, it's like, come on, folks. It doesn't take that much to figure out how these so-called social relations experts operate. It's just, they invert, they flip, they use sophistry. They're experts at the inverted use of the trivium. And all you do is you take their stuff and you flip it back, and you go, oh, when you have that epiphany moment and all the contradictions fall out, that's when aha, I got you guys. And Jordan Peterson does the exact same thing as Leary and all these other guys. I mean, it's just the same tactic that we exposed with Salem, and that you and I exposed with the War of the Worlds, and we exposed with the music mind control. It's the same stuff over and over. It's like, Hans and I, 42 episodes later, we're not even really exposing that much new stuff. We're just, going further into the minutia of what, Hans and I started exposing 4 years ago for the music mind controls. Can you believe it's already been that long? It's like, wow.
Yeah, dude, I can't. It's been a long time. No, the thing is that, I mean, these things that, you're set up. I mean, as you mentioned, that's the thing. Like, okay, so, we have this ludicrous, they make this new law that, there's like 1,000 different genders in Canada. If you don't call someone, I'm a cis, bi, elephantine, whatever,
right,
and you call them by the wrong gender, you're charged with a hate crime.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's so extreme anyways, but he's up there and he's like this valiant scholar. Well, notice how much money he's got. He got like, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's making way more than he was as a professor.
Right.
And we can go, and he was, I think he was recruited some kind of source funded UN initiative quite a while back. So there's some other stuff about actually them wanting a kind of public intellectual frontman that he was actually recruited to do this. But
here's the thing, folks. As soon as somebody's promoted on the MSM, even if they're attacking them and playing up the dichotomy against them, you don't see CNN calling me and Hans up, come on and expose how the music industry was mind controlled and how all these people work. They're dirty. They're all on the take. It's Anderson Cooper, Mr. CIA from the Vanderbilt family, who's a homosexual, is never going to call us up and say, come on the show and help us expose how we inverted everything and mind controlled you. Jordan Peterson, maybe he comes out, he calls me up or emails me and says, hey, you caught me. I'm sorry. We have to leave it open to the possibility that he has an iota of integrity, but it's doubtful, because we can see that he's fully aware of all of the degeneracy that, that Howard Bloom is promoting with just alone with Alice Cooper. And he's fully aware of it. That means he's trained at the Harvard Psychology and Social Relations Department, whatever you want to call it today. He's trained there in this stuff. This is what they do. It's simple social relations. It's not that difficult to invert their stuff and figure it out. They're not geniuses. They're simpletons who lie a lot. That's it.
Yeah, and then you have, your actor network theory. You create various antagonistic forces and this and that, So, yeah, but one thing, I mean, the deeper level though is that he's saying that music, reflects the cosmos, or some. You're talking about Alice Cooper. What you mean, the cosmos of, of demonic evil? That's he actually he pledged allegiance, if whatever you want to call it, chaos, social disorder, demonic energy. He pledged allegiance to it. Both of them. And he can't take that back. It's there. It's right there. Not only the other stuff, he just said, I'm fully on board. I know what this can do, but he's saying that this is reflecting what kind of cosmic order. Maybe Bach does it. I don't think Alice Cooper does, when he's cutting the head off a baby and the blood spurting from the baby get his head cut off. Is that what you're talking about, Jordan? Come on, buddy. Mr. Genius, intellectual, nice guy. Anyways. Sorry, okay. I'm going a little off there. But
yeah. Well, yeah. You should probably say that's your opinion, Hans, just for the caveat's sake, so that we don't get sued or whatever.
Well, I don't. I don't have to say that. I mean, that's what he said. I mean, if I insulted his,
and you're an academic yourself. You're a doctor yourself, so
Well, if I insulted his erudition, then I apologize. But. I'm not insulting his erudition, and I complimented him, but I also said that, okay, so be it. Jordan, I love you, buddy. Let's come on over. Let's drink a Molson Golden and watch some hockey.
Look, all right. Thanks, everybody, for the love and support tonight. Hans, why don't you give out your website and your donation email address and all of that again? And
okay. Yeah,
thanks.
Hans Utter.
Sorry, I was just going to say thanks, Paul Miller, for he says the heart has been lost. We're trying to bring it back, folks. Anyway, sorry, go ahead there.
Yeah, it's Hans Utter at hotmail.com and HANSUTTER, hansutter.com. I do have the book I'm working on based on the series. It's about 1,000 pages now, so I'm trying to edit it down to a manageable size. So I actually got a novel coming out, I guess. Hopefully the guy that I'm working with doesn't listen to the show, because then he'll probably pull the book. But no,
you haven't shared the book with me yet. So, and you've been
no, that's different. The book based on this, the music stuff is a separate thing. This is a fiction novel, this kind of thing. And so the affiliations would cause they'd be like, pull it, go to the pulp. It'd be,
he's working with Jan Irvin. How dare he?
Yeah,
guilt by association. Jan told the truth. Let's read all the CIA hate against him.
Yeah. No, but I just like to thank everybody. And I actually, again, appreciate support. I actually want to start trying to produce some creative stuff too, that at least, as best I can do, has at least some kind of power, something positive, because, again, I appreciate, again, hearing these guys saying that's what I've been saying. And so they know it. It's not just I'm plugging that. I really haven't heard many people, on a music industry level talk that way, but it's nice to say they know what they're doing. It's not just accidental. So that at least I feel affirmed. My self-esteem is better, and I feel less alone. Thanks. I'm less isolated. So
yeah.
But
did you give out your email address again for all the?
I did. Yeah, it's hansutter@hotmail.com. By the way, I lost my voice today. I've been sick, so I thought I was actually going to cancel the show. So if I'm a little wired,
you got to lay off all the grains and sugar, dude, and beer.
Yeah,
and Molson Goldens. All right.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Sweet dreams, everyone. Thanks for all the support and love tonight, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.